Hello everybody! Welcome to more Inconsistent Bookworm, and we are getting to something a little into outer space. Of course, I am talking about Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt Volume 2. Now, those who kind of remember my original opinions about Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt, the first one, I rather enjoyed it, and it seemed to be saying up to what I thought was a trilogy. Boy, was I wrong. First off, there is going to be a minimum of, if I'm not mistaken, 14 volumes of this. And I really think they thought it was going to be just like a trilogy of books, which is fine. This larger kind of format, it's a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger, or so you can see like more of actual what's going on. It lends itself to shorter stories because if you do these multi-epics, this, for lack of a better way to put it, Bleach-esque stories, or hell, even Dragon Ball or Naruto or One Piece kind of stories, you do nothing but these big sons of bitches. You're going to wonder, why are people not really buying this? It's a little on the big side. And two, there's only so much people can keep reading something that long and engrossing, especially something dealing with Mobile Suit Gundam. And those who want to remember, the best way to describe this particular series, Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt, it takes place during the 1 Year War, which was from 0079 to 0080. Sorry, 2 zeros and then an 8 and then another 0. Pretty much it takes place across a year. That's the reason why it's called the 1 Year War. And it was also a particularly devastating war. It wiped out over half of all humanity, combined with nuclear assaults, colonies being dropped on Earth, poison gas attacks on other colonies. These are just straight up just fucking opening them up to the elements of space. It wiped out billions of people. And it was, of course, super destructive and all this other fun stuff. Not fun, really. But more importantly, this is talking about some of the later stages of it. So this is taking place, we'll probably assume, it has to be taking place between the Battle of Solomon and probably the Battle of Baoku. Those who are wondering what gibberish I just spat out, the Gundam series, the Mobile Suit Gundam, the first ever Mobile Suit Gundam series, it takes place during the entirety of or most of the 1 Year War. Pretty much the last few months is what it takes place. And of course, it follows unbeknownst to us at the time, a new type named Amuro Ray, who is an ace pilot, and he's able to shoot down all the bad guys, and he leads the Earth to defeating Zeon. Or space Nazis, in all essence. Go figure. Now, it's not that story doesn't have room for more additions. There is, of course, Mobile Suit Gundam Chronicles that I still own the original copies of. That there's plenty of different stuff to add. And I didn't mind Thunderbolt adding stuff. Just the biggest issue, and it's always the issue that's plagued pretty much going back over the 1 Year War, is what are we going to add? We know that Zeon are not going to win. There's no way you can change that. But we also know that Zeon are going to eventually rise up. If you wanted to talk about that kind of story, that's interesting, that's fine enough. Or if you want to talk about some of the little bit of battles that's happening between us, which at first it seemed to be the idea. It was supposed to be about the, pretty much, I.O. Fleming, I believe that's how it's pronounced, I think I already said that in the last one. He is an ace pilot in a way. He has another Gundam that the Federation happened to have had, scene on hand. They kind of describe how the full armor Gundam came about, but they don't explain, like, why some of its like unique features, like the fact it can have rotating shields that can help protect itself, why that's never used in any later Federation suits. In fact, the back here it shows like multiple unique kind of mobile suits that never appear outside of the series. And that's another issue that any kind of story like this would suffer from, is that you're trying to bridge something that you can only work within certain limitations. Like, you can't introduce too many like brand new Gundams that are going to be like super state of the art that are going to be more powerful than, say, the Zeta Gundam, because eventually that's what you're going to lead into. Or if you want to, you can lead into Stardust memory. It's the 0083. Now, because of that, it's weird to see, oh, well, there's more gun cannons. Like, they have like 10, I want to say, as part of this group, this Thunderbolt group, and then they have a bunch of like these gyms, is how they even describe them. I think it's GM and gym. They have multiples of those, but these are very much like the full armor Gundam. They have these like kind of rotating shields. They have different armaments, and there's a bunch of these called gym cannons. And it's like, okay, from all that we know, these weren't really a big thing till a bit after the war. And it's not that that's bad. I'm not going to sit here and try and nitpick mobile suit configurations or anything like that. But I am going to say that there is an issue with this particular volume. This is like 90% action. There's a little bit of pathos between Daryl, he's the Xeon pilot, and who is part of the, if I'm not mistaken, they're called the Living Dead Battalion or something like that. They're pretty much soldiers who have had amputations, but because of the configurations that have been done to the mobile suits, they're actually they're able to pilot them just like a normal pilot would be able to. In fact, maybe better. And in fact, by the end of it all, Daryl is given this spiffy, totally not Char meant Zaku that is supposed to have this like special like AI in it that allows it to be able to be used. Pretty much it'll help any pilot to be a great pilot. It's not exactly explained real well. They describe it as I'm literally having to use reuse P device, or they also call this the Psycho Zaku. Now, why do I read it like that is simply because it's kind of nonsense. It's not that there isn't an AI that would be able to help a pilot or anything like that. Those who have played Titanfall 2 remember BT. He's probably one of the most memorable and hilarious characters that a robot has ever been. And yes, more than R2. But here it's like it's not explained in that essence, and not only that, but Mobile Suit Gundam has never really delved much into artificial intelligence outside the Mobile Suit Gundam Wing franchise, and I don't mind it being brought up, just none of it is ever dealt with throughout we'll say War in the Pocket, which is technically takes place at the very end of the 1 year war, which 0080. Nothing of that sort is seen in Stardust Memory, 0083. None of it is seen at all in Zeta Gundam or ZZ Gundam, the most silliest name of a Gundam. And I don't know if any of it ever comes up in any of the Gundam series, short of the mobile doll units that are used in Mobile Suit Gundam Wing. So, I don't know what this is. And on top of everything, it doesn't exactly make sense, especially considering at one point, Daryl, he has one arm still remaining. And she says, oh, well, for him to be able to properly use it, he'll have to have his other arm amputated. And he just kind of goes with it. So, and she's like, how? And she is this doctor's the one who helped to create this weapon. she gets really mad at this one guy because he kind of pushed her into helping to make this a thing. And I don't know why he needed to have his arm removed. It's it's not explained. Maybe it's kind of hinted at in different things, but that's another issue with this entire manga. This particular volume is, like I said, it's about like 90% fighting, which, hey, I like some action and all that, but it's not very. There's a thing of sequential art that you need to make sure that scenes flow rather well into each other. Some things that would look really cool comic or look cool on screen in an anime don't always translate to a comic in all essence. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of weird implications. Like at one point, there's all these fresh new people coming in. And let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Like this sequence right here, I don't know if that is supposed to be a bunch of them coming in or if it's just one of them coming in. It looks like, I'm just gonna put it, looks like utter garbage. The artwork's also really, it's exaggerated is the best way. That's always been a good thing that Gundam has stayed away from. Is usually it's stayed away from these over exaggerated art styles. Only a few times does it ever really dip too much into cheesecake, and when that happened, that was realistically, technically during two major Gundam series. Of course, ZZ Gundam, one of the infamous ones, because it looks nothing like Zeta Gundam, and it also tries to be a little silly at times whenever it's like, this is about a giant group of people trying to murder everybody. It's like, this is not silly. And it also is following Zeta Gundam, a fantastic series. Go watch Zeta Gundam. If you have never watched a Gundam series, you can actually start there, I think, and you won't be too confused because there's a lot of, like, here, we're going to talk about this and this and this. And holy shit, does it still hold up. And it actually still looks really damn good. And, of course, the other one, G Fighter. Or, Mobile, the pretty much wrestling match of Mobile Suit Gundam. Where, boy, was it goofy. Here, there's a lot of those over-exaggerated figures. And because of that, it kind of destroys some of the humanity that is always the core of Mobile Suit Gundam. And not only that, but characters kind of got brought up in second volume are just fucking massacred. In fact, it makes a big deal about like the fact that Daryl was able to use his Psycho Zaku, and they want to make a big fuss about the fact the captain of the ship, the Moore Brotherhood is what they call themselves. They're pretty much the survivors of the Moore colony being destroyed. I think that was the one that got dropped onto Australia in the early part of 1 Year War. And it wants to talk about her issue with drug addiction, but she dies like 2 chapters later, and it's like, why do I care? Because there's no scenes after Io confronts her over her addiction issues and all this and that. There's no scenes of her till she is dead and pretty much dying. So what does it add to the story? And it just feels like they wanted to have a point, and unfortunately, a lot of times they just whiffed. It's not good. I don't know how else to describe it. It's very not good. It kind of wanders around the whole idea of what's supposed to be happening, and because the action sequences are not really well done, there's chaos for the sake of, it's war, it's chaos and everything, but then there's I don't know what the fuck is happening moments whenever people are just getting shot and killed and there's no real pump to it all. There's just like, okay, well, that's happening. And then people seem to die randomly. Like one scene I was kind of looking at and I was like, I've looked at it like about 12 times. I cannot tell you what happens in it. at one point, this is supposed to be this random young pilot. His gun cannon's all messed up and he needs to eject. So he ejects into his little, like, core thing. It's pretty much like a escape hatch. Which also happens to have a couple of guns and all that. And he's near he's near an enemy. Okay, so what's going to happen? It kind of like has this little cut and it makes it seem like the enemy's not paying attention to him and then suddenly he's dead. I have flipped one page. What happens in this scene? And that's the thing I keep saying throughout. I'm like, what is happening here? Fact me if I know. This is one of the most baffling Mobile Suit Gundam stories to try and read. The art style is a bit to try and get used to. I'm still not 100% used to it. It's a little too cartoony is the best way to put it. And on top of that, I'm tired of just characters being introduced and then just fucking murdered for no reason. I'm like, well, why did you bother to introduce them? Why did we even give them a name? Or why are we having these weird existential hang-ups? Why do I need to have this character's drug issues come up if they're just gonna fucking die 2 chapters later and you're not going to address them in that time frame? Like, it would have been one thing if she'd be like, it's my fault that we died because I was not being a good captain, blah, 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 or anything before that. But no, it just, I want to do drugs, and then just, we all get attacked and we're dead. The fuck? So, I do have Volume 3. I'm going to read it. I'm going to delve more into it to see what the fuck is happening and see if we can get some semblance of cohesion. That's the main thing I want. I want the story to make sense. And that's a thing the second volume cannot accomplish. So, if you're a hardcore Gundam Knight, I don't even think you would even like this. It plods in a snail's pace at times whenever it wants to be deep, but it's about characters that aren't the main characters that just fucking die left and right. And it's like, okay, I get that there's a point to make us want to give a shit about characters, but this is sort of like with Lala, whenever she was introduced to Mobile Suit Gundam, at least there was a prelude to her death. She was given character motivations and forward momentum beforehand. Hell, whenever Celia came up, actually, in the original Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, like, at least she wasn't just this random henchwoman that just showed up at the end of the fucking thing. Sure, she was in the last bit of the story, but she was still there. And she was at least in more than one episode. Here, the captain's had, like, about 3 scenes across these 2 books. One of them was where she kind of talked to Io for a little bit. Another one where she used drugs randomly and Io's got to berate her about it. And then we had to learn about Io's father committed suicide because that supposedly makes him deeper and gives us some reason for why Io has these hang-ups that we were never shown. I honestly think the writer just started throwing stuff at the wall and was like, here, someone's got a fucking stick. So, like I said, I'm going to read Volume 3 and eventually say whether or not if it gets better than 2. I don't expect much. But hey, maybe lower expectations will lead to something good. So, don't read it. It's not worth your time right now. And since it's also technically a higher-end manga to be able to purchase, skip it for now. We'll see if 3 actually does pick up the story and actually explain something. Or at least gives me a character that doesn't die in 2 chapters. So hey, until then, I will see you all later with something a little bit whitened. So, until then, see you all later. So, bye-bye, everybody.